Welcome to the inaugural PacMUG, Pacific Maximo User Group. This is going to be a conglomeration of some existing groups that are out there. The whole purpose of this is to create a community, a greater community of Maximo users, focusing on those here on the West Coast, the Pacific side of the US. Just as so this is our agenda for the day. We've got quite a bit of content to get through. Our presenters that have graciously donated some of their time to share some of their information and their experiences. We've got them in a 30-minute slot, which is a little less time than you might be used to on some of these webinar events. So we're going to be going at a pretty brisk pace here. And so thank you to Maureen, Holland, Universal Studios, Dan Scott with Arcadis Gen, Kim Woodbury with IBM, Scott Yates with EDI, and John Bosse with IBM as well, for again offering their time. I would like to also recognize the sponsors for this event. So EDI, the organization that I'm with, as well as Scott Schilling with ZPro, we are coordinating this event. We also have the we also have Projitech, who is sponsoring this event, as well as Corey and Associates. Now, Rick, and he's going to be doing a spotlight a little later on, but just a little extra on Rick. Rick also helped facilitate the NorCal User Group, actually created that back in the day. So we appreciate him sponsoring and helping to facilitate this meeting as well. We also have some representation from PANMU, the Pacific Northwest User Group, and Ray Hani and Jesse Warby are also on the line as well. Just a little bit about how this the logistics of this meeting. We are going to hold questions until the end of the session. So there will be a Q&A that will open it back up to all the panelists. And if you do have questions, by all means, enter those into the questions. So on the right-hand side, you'll see a toolbar. You do have the opportunity to ask questions there. Please do so. You can also raise your hand during that Q&A session. There's a little hand icon on the right-hand side. So we will open that up to allow you to speak at the end, but we ideally will answer those at the end of the session. So you do have the option of toggling. You should see all of our pictures at the top of the screen, as well as the presentations that will be showing up at the bottom of the screen. But there is a toggle that you can either make our pictures, you want to see more of us and less of the presentation, or scroll it back up and see just the presentation. So with that, let me introduce Scott Schilling, the co-coordinator for the PacMUG.
Thank you, Michael. We are recording?
Yes.
All right, so hello and welcome to the Pacific Maximo Users Group webinar. As Michael mentioned, my name is Scott Schilling. I'm one of the community group leaders with ZPro Solutions in conjunction with Michael and EDI, and of course the IBM team. ZPro Solutions and EDI have partnered up in reviving the Pacific Maximo User Group to expand the network and end users with ongoing quarterly, seasonal webinars and meetings. This group encompasses California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, and Hawaii in conjunction with PANMU and NorCalMUG groups. Once the in-person meetings open back up, we will resume with the periodic on-site meetings, moving from state to state, hosted by one of our group members' auditoriums for a full-day event. And hopefully, yes, breakfast and lunch, and most likely happy hours will be provided by our sponsors. In addition, with the on-site meetings, we plan on streaming a live broadcast of the meetings to continue to support remote attendees to stay informed and engaged with each of the group events that we have going forward. What we'd like to do is also offer up, if you would be interested in being involved with PacMUG Steering Committee, we're looking for one representative from each PacMUG state. In addition, if you're interested in presenting or sponsoring at one of our seasonal events, please drop us a note. We'd love to chat with you guys. Special thanks to ZPro Solutions and EDI in planning the execution going forward of these ongoing quarterly meetings, which include end-user presentations, SME presentations, featured spotlights, and the latest IBM Maximo updates. We'd like to thank all the presenters and sponsors for sharing with the PacMUG community a snapshot of how their organization utilizes and supports asset management through Maximo's many industry solutions and offerings, as well as third-party tools supporting your asset management journey out there. So with that, today's agenda is packed full of valuable information, compressed into a 3.5-hour meeting. So if you'd like a follow-up conversation in regards to any of the presentations or spotlights featured today, please leave us a note in the chat window, and then we will connect. Today's webinar, again, is going to be recorded and then posted to the IBM PacMUG Community, ZPro, and EDI websites, as well as the More Community website. So with that, let me turn it back over to our co-host, Michael Nutt with EDI. Michael?
Thank you, Scott. So one other thing to mention, there's already been a couple of questions. So everybody who is in attendance, your mic will be muted. We will have the cameras on for the speakers that are presenting, as well as we'll bring everybody back up during the Q&A. We will open up mics for those who do have questions, if you have a question at the end. But until then, everybody's mic will be off. We will try and make this as interactive as we can. I'm sure a lot of you have been on webinars, several different types of webinars, different types of platforms to serve up these types of virtual meetings. I'm not a big fan of just sitting in front of the screen and watching presentations, but trying to get some input from you folks that are actually in attendance. So we do have a few polls that we will be conducting throughout this meeting, and I'm going to start with the first one. So I do have an interest of, or we all have an interest of, where everybody's at. So where are you right now? California, Oregon? We did open this up to Alaska and Hawaii, and if you're from one of those states, I applaud you, because it's pretty early where you are right now.
Click an option, and we will be gathering all the results of the polls.
Yeah, we got just about everybody. Excellent. All right, and here's the results of that poll.
Okay, I have a lot of visitors. So which state would you like to be?
Yeah. Very good. All right, we'll do one more. So just to get an idea of where you are on your Maximo journey. So are you brand new, been using it for a little while, using it for a really long time? We do have some folks that often pop onto these that are interested in Maximo. Also good conversation to have with those folks. So we got a few new people. All right, so we've got about 60 people who have responded. Give you a few more seconds. Looks for the most part that 70, 75, a couple more. Come on, if you haven't voted, put your vote in. All right, good enough. So here's your results. So over half has been using it for over 10 years. So we've got a wealth of knowledge here. Excellent.
Seasoned veterans.
Yeah, and that's kind of the goal, to get people connected within these communities. So let's see, what kind of users we have. So do you use Maximo operationally, day in and day out? Do you manage the system? Are you part of the IT or system admin group? Or are you just kind of an occasional user that you pull reports out of? You're part of the management team. You're gaining the results of the system. Well, a lot more people that don't use Maximo directly than I thought. That could be the vendors, especially on the
Very well could be.
sales side. Although I like using Maximo. It's a good tool. All right, very good. So here's some of the results for that. So it looks like more than half of you are on the configuration side, the management side, making sure that it stays up and running. Excellent. Those are good friends to have. Very, very nice. All right. Well, thank you for answering those questions. And I would like to now bring up our first presenter, who is also part of that group that helps to keep the system up and running. Maureen Holland with NBC Universal.
Good morning, everybody.
And so we'll hide our faces, and there's Maureen. Good morning, Maureen. The floor is yours. Yep, we can see your screen. You are good to go. Thanks, Maureen.
Okay, good. Good morning, everybody. I'm Maureen Holland. I am the systems manager in the shared support group of technical services at Universal Studios Hollywood. I'd like to thank the committee for asking me to come and talk this morning. I wasn't really sure what I was going to talk about right away. And then it became obvious to me, as some of you know, Universal has been shut down since March due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And, so you would think that there wouldn't be a lot going on in the Maximo world at Universal Studios Hollywood, but that has not been the case. When the Universal Studios Hollywood Tech Services Shared Support Group was sent home on March 16, 2020, we were told that we were going to work from home until COVID-19 subsided. Most of us had never worked from home before. And without an operation to support, we assumed that either we had no job security or control, or that the worst was going to be over soon and we were going to go back to work. Due to the situation, there was some obvious major reorganization underway, considering our doors were closed, and the company as we knew it and our roles were completely changing. If we wanted to stay employed, it was important that we quickly determine how we could best provide value to our business during this unprecedented time. We'd been through recessions, backlot fires, earthquakes, September 11th, you name it, but nothing like this. With all this uncertainty in a world where everything familiar had suddenly changed, we struggled to find our purpose. How would we stay engaged? With the support of our executive leadership team, we decided to use this time effectively to touch areas that we could never support when there were bigger priorities and the business was requiring a higher level of responsiveness. It was important to us that our people still had a sense of purpose, that they felt safe and secure in uncertain times. The result was a willing and productive team able to continue delivering tangible and value-added outcomes. We immediately met to create a laundry list of key objectives that we could continue and low-hanging initiatives that we could plan and prioritize. This proactive approach defined our purpose for this period and helped all of us feel more in control. Though I don't have time to deal with every accomplishment, I'd like to highlight over the next few minutes some key outcomes and the overall impact of this period in the future of Maximo at Universal Studios Hollywood. A bit of background on how we manage Maximo-related initiatives includes an interdepartmental Maximo Governance Committee, which includes key executives to help shape strategy, inform opportunities, and determine priorities. This committee is not just responsible for the functional outcomes for Maximo, but places a high priority on supporting the change through planned and actionable change management initiatives. This approach has always been paramount to achieving strong outcomes in the Maximo space, but has become even more essential during these uncertain times. So one of the first areas that we attacked was our quality control area. Our quality control group had been asking for our help to eliminate their highly manual processes for quite some time. There was a lot of redundancy and it was extremely manual. Due to circumstances beyond our control, they've gotten prioritized beneath other urgent fixes during normal park operations, because at least they did have some processes in place. Nonetheless, their processes were still quite inefficient, with lots of redundant tasks, primarily handled in multiple Excel spreadsheets. The COVID shutdown finally gave us the opportunity to take care of them. Now, when items received that require inspection, which in a theme park is a substantial amount of items, an email notification is sent to QC team members to coordinate that inspection, and an automated QC work order is created as a child tied to the original work order to track the inspection. Purchase order quality requirements are a part of the add items to inventory process that I will be talking about more shortly in another section of this deck. Obviously, there was a lot of work to be done in the work orders and PM areas. In those areas, we continued to work on some major initiatives like the Pets attraction opening and rolling out automated inspections from work centers module for the operations compliance and attractions show quality groups external to tech services. The goal with this was to have a database full of information for people inspecting show quality items and attractions related safety issues, so that there would be images and other items available to them while they were doing their inspection, and it would all be on an iPad. We also reviewed all work order screens with a simplified user interface in mind. The users will only see what they need now. We looked at all visible fields for relevancy and hid anything we considered obsolete or unnecessary for our current processes. This was done in conjunction with the rollout of the crew module. As some of you know, the crew module didn't always exist, so this had to be done. This will be a major step forward in our data integrity, self-service querying and reporting capabilities, and it will eliminate some workarounds that we have been using for that exact same data since before the crew module existed. In addition, we required that every work order, with no exceptions, have at least one labor transaction applied to it before the status is allowed to be changed to complete. This was done using an automation script, and several people on this call helped to validate this concept for us, so we were sure it would work. Thank you very much to all of you. You know who you are. After using Maximo for 20 years, there was no real governance around adding failure codes. Code hierarchies had been completely changed 3 times, and it has been a huge undertaking. We are now in the process of working with a more comprehensive stakeholder team to provide the exact info that we need to have captured at this very point in time. On to the procurement area. When discussing our procurement opportunities, it is important to note that our inventory consists of over 20,000 SKUs in excess of $40 million. Our business needs determine what we hold, so these numbers could even go up more in the future. So managing these areas is a huge operation with many complexities. So for starters, we used the COVID opportunity to consolidate a legacy storeroom into our main warehouse, allowing for more consistent, transparent, and streamlined processes. The new shipping and receiving workflows allowed for transparency of inventory locations between our main warehouse and other locations inside the park, our main warehouse and our off-site maintenance facility, and between that warehouse and other external park locations like Universal Orlando. We also took this opportunity to expand the use of planned materials on our PM work orders and add reservation notifications to our warehouse group to stage and kit the materials to be used on planned work. Prior to that, that process was a very ad hoc process, and it's gotten much more streamlined and efficient for the technicians. Previously, users requesting that items be added to inventory and use SharePoint, where an inventory person had to actually copy the data from SharePoint to Maximo to create the item. Now we utilize service requests inside of Maximo for those business areas to request items. This service request is pushed into a workflow. Then, upon final approval at the end of the workflow, an item is created. Prior to the implementation of RFQs, requests for quotation involved manual multiple emails of Maximo reports to vendors. Now, a purchase requisition report is attached to an email automatically to a vendor, or vendors, you can do it with multiple vendors, and it will come back with quotes from the vendor for approval. Our auto reorder process also now auto-generates RFQs. The self-service warehouse checkout system uses work order management work centers, and each transaction must have an active work order. This system validates all required fields, and the biggest bonus is that all transactions are real-time. So what did we take away from this period? We learned that reinvention during these times was an absolute necessity. We could not have made it through this last year without it. We learned that you can make lemonade out of low-hanging fruit, even if it feels impossible, which it did last March. We learned to not be afraid to change a process if it is no longer working. Maximo has been in play at Universal Studios Hollywood since the year 2000. Some of that stuff, due to resource constraints, hadn't been looked at in a long time. And what we learned is, if you are in the room thinking that a process doesn't work, there's probably someone else in that room that's thinking that too. Always keep the user interface and data requirements in mind. If your users are not using the system, you are not going to have the data. So it's important to build the system in a way that users are going to intuitively get something out of using it and are going to do the right thing. Think outside the box. There were a couple of things that were mentioned that had not been done before, to the best of our knowledge in Maximo. And you know, when I'm talking about thinking outside the box, I'm saying that if you think that it cannot be done, that is not necessarily the case. So it's best to just run your ideas up the flagpole and, you know, try to make them happen, because just because nobody's ever done it before does not mean it's not going to happen. And then finally, on this top point, don't implement functionality you can't maintain. We had at one point a whole lot more levels to the asset hierarchy at Universal than we need. And we are in the middle of cleaning that up right now. And it's a major piece of business. And what we learned from that is if you can't maintain it and people aren't going to use it, then don't implement it. Next is to reach out to others in the Maximo community for ideas and or validation. I'm going to give a little shout out to the MORE community because I've used them multiple times this year and they've been awesome. I have gotten almost immediate answers to questions that I've had. In the past, when I was using, the Yahoo group and other, avenues, the answers didn't necessarily come in until, after I really needed them. And so far, they have been extremely, responsive, and the people that have jumped in have helped me a lot. And everybody that's involved in putting this user group together, I know will pick up the phone too. And we're in a very interesting point in the Maximo community. There's a lot of help for us, finally. I feel a little like the cavalry's come. And I'm really looking forward to utilizing that. So thank you guys for that. Know your stakeholders and gather consensus. If you don't have all your stakeholders in the room, like we didn't when we were making our failure hierarchies, what happens is the stakeholders change, the priorities change, the data changes, and you have to start over again and gather consensus. And we've done that, but it's a step that if we had everybody in the room at the beginning, we might not have had to do it. We might have had to do it too, but there's a chance that we could have only had to do this once. And finally, the most important thing on this list, seek executive leadership support for change. Executive leadership support has allowed things to happen during the COVID shutdown that we had been trying to make happen for years. And finally, there's been so much leadership support thrown at the Maximo initiatives and supporting that change management. For instance, with the mandatory labor transactions wasn't a popular item for a few people in our user group, and executive leadership made that happen. And so I can't tell you how important this is. I have a feeling you all know this, but again, it was, during this shutdown time, it was made more evident to me just how really crucial that is. Thank you for your time. As Michael said, we're going to be doing questions at the end, but I appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to everybody else's talks, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Maureen. Great information during troubling times. All right, so we're going to now move to our first sponsor spotlight, which will be Progitech and Chris Winston. Oh.
And let me go ahead, and I don't have the icon to share my screen, Mike.
Yeah, not quite yet, because
okay.
There you go.
There it is. All righty. I guess we don't need to see me anymore.
Yeah, keep your face on the screen. That's great.
As long as I know I can see me. All right. So my name is Chris Winston with Progitech, and I'm going to talk mainly about the More Maximo community. Something we actually had planned on rolling out at Maximo World last August, but things changed, so we rolled out in May. Got it out early, and what I want to talk to you a little bit about is navigating in that community, starting out with the access you have before you join. So before you actually join the community, you'll still be able to see events, recent activities, where we're going to popular content, so some things that are common, there'll be tags throughout, and then you can, of course, just do searches. IBM and Pearson have put a number of the Maximo certifications online, so you can take them from home, office, go to a testing center like you used to have to, and so on. It's just more flexible and up to you, and it's for all of the current 7.6 certifications. And then, of course, the open forum. So you have access to all of that without actually becoming a member. Now, should you become a member, you pick up a few other things as well. There are a number of resources that are going to be there and available to you, and that list continues to increase. And you'll also be able to create, and thanks to the shout from Maureen, just as a reminder, if you want to be able to create a post, put a question in, you would need to be a member to do that. You can also reply to them as well. And then you can manage your profile, which allows you to effectively decide what you're gonna, do you want to get automated notifications, or do you want to just come in when you want to at any given time, and you have control over that. So actually, and any questions or any Maximo events that you have that are Maximo based, send them to contact@moremaximo.com. We'll get that, we'll get them posted. We just need them to be Maximo events, and that's about it. Let's go ahead and get into the community. All right, so you'll notice I am not logged in to the community, and there are a number of things that are available to me now. So this is recent postings. Down here at the bottom are events. There's some contact information at the bottom as well, but we'll come back up to the top here and we'll see where is here, events. You can click on events directly, and then, well, here's today, of course, and then other events as we get them in. We go ahead and put them up here from, many different sources. The user groups, maybe webinars, they may be short, they may be long, but again, we're just trying to make sure that as these things occur, in as much advance as possible, we try and make that information available again around Maximo. All right, let's go back to the homepage. Now, sometimes you're searching for something, so you can actually, and we're updating the tag, so where it says search for other content, you'll see that there'll be a few 5 or 6 buttons for common things, but if you're not sure, you just come up and search. Say I'm looking for something that's end user related. And there are a number of things that are coming up, because you'll see there'll be individual tags. So if you post a message, you can actually tag it as well, which will make it easier for you to find it, later on. Now, the nice part about using this community, it allows us to be able to communicate a number of different media. We got a YouTube channel, as many of our partners do as well, which allows us to post a video. But in this case, we have, the discussion. There are actual links that can be made available, including links to YouTube. And we can also post documents. So, PowerPoint, a Word document, PDF file, whatever it's going to be, and actually make that available where somebody can download it directly. And of course, now the question is, what window did it show up in? There's Word. Well, of course, it's over there. And let's see if we can bring it over here. So, now I've got the Word document, I've got the links that are here, some that are related. It looks like I've got some sample query segments here that I can copy and paste in the Maximo if I want to do that. So, and you notice the fixed pitch font here is really just because if I copy paste with the curly quote, they're not going to work in Maximo. So, so that allows that to actually take place as well, and it's useful information and readily available. So that is going to be also something that you can get to. There's some modifications that we're going to make, and we're continually enhancing the functionality at the site, as well as having more and more content come in. So looks like about an hour ago, somebody had a question about a mass update, and somebody is going to respond to that with a potential answer around the question, sub-LN, customer code. Well, maybe they're looking at Maximo for service provider or control desk. Sub-LN, not sure what that is, but again, it's a large community. We've got 950 plus people in it now. Somebody's probably going to know the answer to that or ask a question to get it clarified. And we'll continue to work through these as people have them. And it's really a great capability that's there. And I've seen all this and I haven't logged in. And I'm running out of time. So I will go ahead and log in. Who will I be today? Let's try that guy. And see if I remember my password. Now there is, yeah. All right, I remembered me. And then I have the ability with my profile. I have a few things I can do. I can actually connect with people inside the group, establish my own network, contributions I'll make. I have my account, can set up my email preferences for what I get from each of the communities, and that's controlled by me. I can modify my contact details for what I want to share, and looks like I've got mail. So emails that come in can actually be managed through the community, and you have access to that as well. And then I should mention at some point, the community is free. It has been free, and it will continue to be free. Now that I'm in, I actually have access to the resources area as well, which is just a huge list of additional documentation. There's a link to the online training, right? So that's actually IBM's, and somewhere in here, IBM Skills Gateway. And looks like the query actually runs and just looks for Maximo stuff. So again, content, from wherever we can find it that's useful. There'll be some things that are here that are referenced the old wiki. Now that, of course, I've gone to the IBM training site, I get a chance to log into it as well, but there's some things I can at least see for as far as classes go without even having to log in. I need to log in to take them. So trying to really get good content that's out here and available for anyone to use to feel access. And again, it remains free. And that's really about all I wanted to cover. But if you do have events that you want to have posted that are related to Maximo, please feel free. You can actually send them a contact at at moremaximo.com, which is referenced right here. And Mike, I guess I'll give it back to you.
Great, thank you, Chris. And the More Community site is really a wonderful tool for it being up for a very short time. It's really garnered a lot of great information in there.
Unmuted.
Yeah, Maureen had mentioned the Yahoo group, and that kind of was the place to go in the past. That was started by Wes Williams, Princeton, back in the day. So that doesn't exist anymore. So I don't think anybody ever actually uses Yahoo groups anymore. But anyway, love the More Community site.
Mm-hmm. Good group.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Chris. So next on the agenda is a discussion about asset management case study at Bay Area Rapid Transit. So that will be presented by Rob Corzola and Dan Scott.
There we are.
There we are. I'm just trying to figure out here. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Rob.
And there's Dan as well.
Dan as well.
And we just need to
Just trying to
unmute Dan. There we go.
And are you seeing my screen right now, or
Yeah, we are.
the actual presentation?
Mhm.
Just need to move this away from me. All right, I'll go into presentation mode. Excellent. Okay, so my name is Rob Corzola. I'm the Director of Sales for Arcadis Gen North America. And with me is Dan Scott, who will be co-presenting. And Dan is our Director of the Analytics Group
Muted.
at Arcadis Gen. So today we are presenting, as Mike mentioned, a case study around some of the work that we've been doing with the Bay Area Rapid Transit Group. And before we get into it, I would like to thank the user community here and the sponsors for allowing us to present. We are very appreciative of that. And I would like to give a shout out to ZPro and Bob Keeley and Scott Schilling that are partners of Arcadis Gen, and we'll give you some contact information on the last slide as well. So with that, I'll proceed. So just before we get into the actual BART transit case study, I just wanted to give you an idea of who Arcadis Gen is. So who we are an entity actually within the larger Arcadis Consulting Group, which is a global firm. But our basic proposition is that we are an asset management digital technology enabler for asset-intensive industries. And I want to emphasize that because we're not really married to any particular industry. Our solutions are quite flexible and agile to go cross-industry in any type of assets. And we are a Platinum Maximo business partner and have been for a number of years. Our purpose is really to unlock the power of the data that you have in many different forms. And obviously we're talking about Maximo here, so that we can all drive towards a more sustainable, efficient, and resilient world. We do so by embedding not only our asset expertise and client needs and technology products, but also delivering value for all of us. Our products, as mentioned, we are a Maximo business partner, and we really focus on developing industry EAM solutions, so targeted solutions for specific industries on top of Maximo. And today we're going to talk about our enterprise decision analytics, which is a tool that the company used to be called SEAMS, and Arcadis actually acquired this company in 2017. And SEAMS was a company or a group that was recognized by Gartner and AMCL as one of the leading decision support and AIP tools in the marketplace. So moving along here, just to give you an idea of what EDA is really all about for your asset investment planning needs. Starting from the left, it's really about leveraging data sources of various sorts. And in this particular case, we're talking about Maximo EAM, but certainly we're quite cognizant that a lot of the data resides in systems like GIS systems, condition assessment systems, sometimes Excel spreadsheets. So we also have a data quality hub or a data hub that ensures that a lot of the incoming data is quality controlled and is appropriate for the modeling. And it fills the gaps as required. So if there's information about the assets that is missing, we can help kind of make some assumptions and fill that data in. So what the tool is really about is about assets and projects. And what we enable you to do is to really conduct asset lifecycle modeling to determine future interventions, optimal interventions on your assets, based on deterioration models, calculating risks, looking at trade-off analysis. So we can generate various business outcomes that can be reported on at the asset level or put forward into the actual investment planning piece. Sometimes these interventions are fed back into your Maximo system to prescribe the optimal events in work orders. It depends on the client needs. If we move along the path here, investment planning is where you actually start to package work into business cases and start to prioritize these business cases based on certain values that your organization has or corporate objectives. And then we can look at prioritization based on various schemes that organizations may have or best practices. And finally, we look at optimization of that portfolio. So we always have a large number of projects, but certain constraints that we're faced with, typically financial constraints, might be labor capacity constraints. It might be a number of different things that you want to focus on. So we've built a number of algorithms and models to really help you optimize against those constraints while trying to achieve certain objectives. And those objectives might be trying to mitigate risk overall to the organization. So this is kind of the flow that, that EDA provides. And again, we want to emphasize that this can really be enabled for any type of asset class, linear or vertical, short and long range planning. It's highly configurable. It incorporates machine learning and artificial intelligence. And we also deploy very complex optimization solvers. Okay, so with that, what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Dan Scott.
Hi, everyone. So let's get into the specific case study. So this is for Bay Area Rapid Transit, BART. So BART are a, sorry, I just lost the slide. Let me just share that. So can we just go back to Rob's screen just for a minute while I talk through the case study, and then I'll take the screen from there.
Do you want me to show my screen, Dan?
Yeah, just the slide, and then we'll drop into the demo. Okay. Right. Okay. So yeah. So Bay Area Rapid Transit, they're quite a long time Maximo user, and we're really looking for an opportunity to put a lot of the data that they've been collecting on the assets into use. So for them, the big challenge was really about the generation of their transit asset management plan. So they have to declare how they're going to invest money into their assets, which assets are going to be replaced, and they need to be able to do that within the framework of complex funding structure. So for every asset that they might choose to replace due to life expiry, they have various different funds that they could draw the money from in order to undertake that renewal of the network. So they had a multifaceted problem where they had a network's worth of assets that comprised everything from the rolling stock to the segments of track to the tunnels, bridges, etc. Now all of those were in various different conditions across their network and all kind of stored and updated within Maximo. They were all deteriorating over time, and they needed to understand how fast that deterioration was happening and how that linked to the operation of the railway network and the risk of running the network in totality. But they then needed to be able to identify which assets to replace, when to replace them, and which funding source to replace them from. The additional item that they needed to be able to take into account in the modelling that they did was the idea that they were in the process of introducing a complete new fleet of trains onto the network and upgrading the signalling system to a modern system. So that meant that the model also had to understand over the next 10 years in those investment decisions that it was going to make, which assets were going to be retired out of service, and therefore if there was risk associated with those assets, that risk would disappear when those assets were taken off the network. Where they had assets that were going to be built but not right now, but maybe in 2, 3, 4 years time, and therefore a new asset would appear onto the network and start to age and start to add more and more risk to the operation of the network over time. And so what we created was a model that enabled them to kind of understand the entire portfolio of assets across their entire network within that complex funding structure and the competitive nature of those funds. That meant that each asset is competing for funding in different funding pots. Alongside that network upgrade program to help them then come up with the optimum asset renewal program to drive the best outcome for their TAM plan. If we can go to the next slide. So in terms of that kind of complex funding structure, in the graphs we've got on the screen now, we can see in the top left, the top graph there shows forecast of capital spend over time, and the lower graph shows the impact on network risk over time. And we see kind of two significant spikes in that spend, which were associated with the introduction of the new fleet of vehicles, and also the retiring of the old signaling system and installation of the new signaling system. And what we can see is those two features have some noticeable impact on overall risk. What you can then see is various different scenarios overlaid on each other, where we have different levels of funding availability, and different, so from the most basic funds through to competitive derived fund that were based on hitting various performance metrics. And what we can see is how much impact they have, how much leverage they have on the overall risk profile in the bottom graph. So unsurprisingly, the more funding that's available, the better the risk outcome. But actually, you can see that some of the swings in the risk are much larger than others, and this is because where the funding source restrictions are less severe, the optimizer is able to find better ways of directing that funding towards the assets that really need it, that are going to drive the maximum improvement in risk. And in the bottom right there, we can see the sort of dynamic mapping that the optimizer is doing between the funding sources on the left and the assets on the right. So now we'll drop quickly into a bit of a demo of that and look at that in a little bit more detail.
Stop sharing again.
Okay, I don't have the sharing option yet. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now.
I can see it now.
Brilliant. Okay, right. So as you mentioned, the first thing that we needed to do was to understand how the assets were degrading with time. So within BART's kind of regulatory structure, they had these models called term models, which were a set of industry-derived deterioration profiles for all the different types of assets they had. So one of the first things that we did was pull through the data that they had in their Maximo system to actually kind of test those curves, those Weibull deterioration curves, for probability of failure of those assets. And what you can see on the screen here, as part of that Data Hub Data Labs module that Rob mentioned earlier, was some reports that ran through that, which looked at using machine learning techniques to take historical failure data out of Maximo and fit that to a failure curve to find actually how well did that fit. And what we found here was actually the rate of deterioration for some asset groups was fairly significantly different from the underlying assumption within the term methodology. And therefore, we were able to take that and feed that back into the modeling and model the deterioration of the assets over time much more accurately as a result of that data that was sitting in Maximo. As we looked at before on the previous screen, we've got various different scenarios that we can run within the system. In essence, we can articulate any set of constraints around budgets and targets and other bits and pieces, and ask the optimization algorithm to find us the best possible program of work to deliver the outcomes we're seeking. So first of all, we're looking at here at kind of what happens with the secure funds, and we can kind of overlay further budgetary scenarios where we have kind of potentially potential bond levy on the districts served by the network, and further kind of performance-based additional money availabilities, and we can see how much impact that has on risk over time. So clearly, if we can drive down risk over time with this higher funding scenario, that's going to give us a good outcome to the network. What we can do next is kind of drill down into that in some detail, so we can actually have a look at what that means over time. As we kind of scroll through the years, we can see how the optimizer kind of works its way through to dynamically kind of remap the funding sources in each year to the various different needs of the assets. And indeed, we can drill right down into individual asset groups if we want. So if we wanted to have a look at the comms assets, we can actually kind of see here, precisely where they are from a condition perspective, and we can see how the optimization algorithm has mapped the needs of the comms assets through to the funding source. So we can see, in this particular year, the comms assets are funneled through the electrical stations, facilities, areas, coming from a combination of competitive funds, secure funds, and bond funds to kind of come together into a single funding portfolio that's going to give the outcome that BART or any other railway we're looking for. Indeed, we can drill right down into that in terms of actual, right down to the Maximo level information, where we've got the individual asset IDs and exactly when they're going to be renewed, which year, in detail. So the system works that right down to the most granular detail in terms of the best possible plan, given everything that we know from the system and its performance, to get the best possible outcome out of the railway in this case, while also observing all of the funding constraints and funding rules that the railway has to follow. Which brings us largely to the end of this demo, and I think, as has been said before, I think all the questions are at the end of the session, so we'll wrap up there.
Thanks, Dan, and appreciate.
Unmuted.
Let's go back to my screen here. Appreciate the comments, Dan, and the showing of the solution. And again, the data that Dan was showing has been anonymized, so it's not actual BART data. We wouldn't want to do that to any client. So just a note on that. So really, as Dan mentioned, that kind of brings us to the end of the presentation. And again, I want to thank the sponsors, the user community for this opportunity. I have my contact information, but I also have Bob Keeley's information, again, who's ZPro is one of our North American partners in the transportation space. So feel free to reach out to Bob Keeley or myself for any additional information, and I'll be around for Q&A as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Dan. All right. I think we're back in business.
Go ahead and go into presentation mode. We'll be in good shape.
Yep. All right. Well, that was painless. All right. It's all you, Bob.
Yeah, you can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Okay.
I'll just prompt you when to change. So sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties. Sometimes we have challenges with our devices, as we all know, and that's why we're in the technology business. Thank you to Mike and Scott for their excellent work on hosting and organizing and getting this event put together. And thank you all for attending today. My name is Bob Keeley. I'm the Director of Business Development and Operations for ZPro Solutions. We're proud to be a co-host today, as well as a sponsor of this event, as well as other MUG events. And just to talk about ZPro quickly, within this vendor spotlight, as we all move away from the crazy year that was 2020, thank God it's over. ZPro continues to grow as a premier IBM business partner and a full service provider of asset management and data management solutions. Even though we are growing, we still retain our SBE status, small business status, as well as MBE and DBE certifications in many states, municipalities, and agencies across North America. We are extremely proud of our leadership team and consultants that have the diverse skill sets to cover many key technologies with and beyond Maximo, such as IoT, GIS, data governance, decision support, and various integration and reporting solutions. The most recent member to join our team in December, Brian Furness, comes to us with 18 years of professional asset management experience with one of the largest transit agencies, New York MTA. And we welcome Brian to our talented team as we continue to expand on our strategic focus on the public sector, transit, and many other industries. Scott, if you can go to the next slide. For ZPro, our clients are our lifeblood. quite frankly, you come first. So we work with you to discover your needs, guide you through unlocking technology, and then lead you through the complete implementation process. Whether you are looking to move to the cloud or wish to host your own solutions, our team will ensure that you have reliable and sustainable innovations that map to your strategic goals. Next slide, Scott. And of course, as you would expect, our primary focus is on IBM Maximo. We're proud to be a silver business partner with IBM and authorized Maximo licensed reseller. We have various certifications for the deployment of Maximo within our consulting team. And of course, we also provide as an additive to the Maximo implementation, strategic asset management advisory services. And with many of our clients, we have helped them with their business processes, whether it be procurement, supply chain, inventory based, as well as even setting up asset management offices and supporting their asset management plans. As you can see, we provide multiple services, and we do support the full EAM project lifecycle. Next slide, Scott. Again, as you know, with our focus on Maximo, we also have brought in a strategic partnership with Arcadis Gen to both resell and deploy their EDA solution, as you just heard about in the BART case study that Dan and Rob provided. We feel that enterprise data analytics, being able to add decision support, asset investment planning into and around the Maximo suite really does provide the full capability for every person within your organization, from asset management owners all the way through maintenance and inventory managers to asset planners. We do believe by adding in EDA that we now do support the true full life cycle of an asset and your capital investments. With the industry support, we do support obviously various industries that are asset intensive clients, everything from transit through power generation, oil and gas. And Scott, if you can go ahead and click to next. You'll also see that we do have full support for all of the IBM Maximo individual industry solutions. IBM Maximo for transportation has been a focus for us because of our client base, but we also do have consultants who are very well versed in Maximo for utilities, as well as all the way through to Maximo for life sciences and Maximo for service providers. Next slide, Scott. So again, I wanted to keep the vendor spotlight short because it is a spotlight. And of course, we had a few technical difficulties in getting into this. And Mike, thanks for throwing in the poll to give us some time. But a shameless plug here. We just launched a brand new website. So if you can go to ZProSolutions.com, you'll be able to see exactly what makes us passionate about asset management and data management solutions. So thank you for that time today, and back to Mike and Scott.
Thanks. And of course, staying on top of events on the ZPro Solutions events site. All right, Michael. So next we have IBM Update, Kim Woodbury on Maximo Application Suite.
That is me. Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Kim.
Hi. Oh, share my camera. Good. And my screen. Oh,
Muted.
I don't have this in full screen mode. Let me see if I can get that going. Are you seeing my PowerPoint?
We are.
Okay, good. Might have to fake it here if it's not going to go. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to the group about the investments we're making around Maximo and the new release, which is the Maximo Application Suite 8.0.
And Kim, just before you get started, we are a little bit ahead of time, and I know
Okay.
you are always full of great information. So if you go a little bit over, that will be okay.
All right. So I can plan for it then. Sorry, there's something here. Now it's saying the last USB that I connected is not functioning. So you can still see my camera. Oh, you know what's not functioning? My mouse. Fantastic. Let me see if I can do this. One more try. Sorry. Since we've got an extra minute, I'll try and make it work so that everyone can see this clearly. As clearly as possible. At least if I do this, I'll get it in as one more try. Aha, there we go. Okay. Brilliant. So we are going to be talking about some futures. So of course, we have our IBM disclaimer. If there are dates or any features here, to not make buying decisions based on what is stated, because it could be adjusted and changed in some way. But let's just dive right into what has been the news this year. Back June in 2020, the first release of the Maximo application suite. And prior to that, we had been talking a lot about the Maximo brand being expanded to include some of the newer APM products. And so I'm going to try and cover today by expanding this offering and this part number to include all of those additional capabilities. It allows our customers to be able to access some of those new expanded capabilities as well in an easier model through this new offering. So it is a rolling release that started, as I said, back last June, with a couple of the offerings included within this umbrella of the application suite. The Maximo EAM portion of this will be included in April. The end of April this year is the target. So we've continued to add things, and we have another release coming out at the end of this month as well. So, you know, I'll talk about the roadmap, but just wanted to make sure it was clear on when things are being included over time. So, you know, we talk about enabling our customers when it comes to this journey to predict, really, being able to incorporate better practices and more capabilities all around asset management and asset lifecycle management, reliability. Starting with what now we will refer to as manage is the EAM, what we all know and love, the traditional Maximo capabilities with work order management and the asset repository and the workflow engine, supply chain, inventory, etc., is all under manage, and being able to capture that within those capabilities within the suite. We want to expand and attach to being able to better monitor those assets and really be able to use the IoT connector and bring in real-time data, meter readings, and be able to apply some logic to those that data that's coming in and be able to look at multiple factors and consider them as a single data point to understand if there's an anomaly with that asset that needs attention. I think one of the great value propositions of what Monitor can offer as we've sort of evolved over time our IoT story and being able to bring in real-time data is to be able to get through the noise of all of that data and really be able to get to the insights of the underlying issues that might be there but not really evident to the human eye, right? It's something that you need some of that advanced detection models to be able to understand. More advanced technology is also being introduced across all of the applications, and we really talk about the infusion of AI or artificial intelligence or assisted intelligence. With visual inspections is one of the capabilities now that you can train from a set of images that might be captured from a device or a drone or any kind of pictorial representation of that asset to understand when there is an anomaly, when there's a condition that is outside, you know, performing at 100%. So we see this being successful with remote assets, especially if you want to, send out something to a pipeline that's out in a remote area and be able to understand if there's corrosion or some other defect just by having that image automatically inspected that can then trigger some work to be done. So we also then talk about bringing in information across my portfolio. So really being able to take a broader look at the health of a classification of assets, a set of assets that are critical to the success of my business, right? That I want to be able to take the information that I've gotten from Monitor, the work order history that I've gotten from Manage, any inspections that may have occurred, and be able to put that into a health score. So we've talked about this as MAHI, as Asset Health Insights, and being able to then dig into those results and now start to make some of the decisions, the financial decisions that we heard of some in the last presentation, right? This all comes down to where do I want to put my limited funding? How do I want to focus that on the right assets at the right time to improve their health and extend their useful life. We then start to combine that with prediction. And as I can get a better set of data over a longer amount of time and have the history now of failures that can come from Manage, from Monitor, from the inspections, and now start to apply some advanced algorithms to interpret when the next failure might occur. I can start doing some further analysis and understand those models and further make the right decisions about investing in repair or replace. We also talk about mobile supporting this whole journey, and I do have quite a few slides on what we're doing with Maximo Mobile. And that Maximo Mobile, it starts with some of the use cases that we support with Anywhere. It is really a rebranding of the Maximo Anywhere product, and it will extend to support some things like assisting the AI assist capabilities, which I'll talk about further, and augmented reality, as well as some of the visual inspections, and get into some of the other applications as applicable where you need the mobile access, disconnected access. And then the digital twin. So there is a marketplace that IBM is supporting, and we have the connections to be able to import that data into Manage from different vendors. We encourage you to ask your vendors to supply any information that digitally represents any complex assets that you are procuring that can then feed into this entire process, right? I need to understand the manufacturer's useful life projections and their maintenance plans and the spare parts that are needed for this asset, and be able to quickly and easily ingest all of that information into this process. Okay. Oh, and I forgot the animation on the digital twin. All right, here we go. So let me go back and focus on sort of the suite in general, some of the changes and the benefits that can be provided by having this new single part number. There is some obviously some benefit in having this integrated solution. So all of the scenarios that I talked through on the last journey slide require you to be able to navigate between these different individual applications and processes, be able to understand, that a single asset ID, that its unique identifier is shared across these different processes, and that the history can be accessed from different points, and that information then can be shared throughout your organization, from the technician who's capturing the data to an asset owner, a planner, all the way up to, a VP of operations that needs to understand a broader view. Usage flexibility is really around the changes in the licensing and how we are actually selling the product. So first of all, it's a single part number. So in the past, we have a catalog of probably thousands of parts when you talk about all the different options that are there, but maybe, you know, say a couple of dozen anyway. But now with the single part number and a notion of application points, which is rather than a user-based sort of license, you have the flexibility to try new options within the suite and be able to shift your usage in a really much more concurrent model. And I have a couple slides on that too. And then there's also the technology. So we are really tasked with making this experience of installing and managing and deploying and serviceability of our solutions simplified, and having it from a single administrative view, and taking advantage of the containerization and OpenShift capabilities that IBM can provide as part of this license. So there are some technology improvements, and with that comes, you know, some learning and some investment in you know, being able to make the most of those new technology options within your organization. So let's talk just a little bit more about the application points so that people understand. It is a single part number that you would procure. So there's also some hopefully easier paths to expansion if you wanted to get into some of these other areas, and maybe even in a test environment, be able to install those components and have some users get access to those with just extending, you know, making sure that you have enough application points available. So that's an important point too, that you don't have to install everything within the suite, right? Some customers are, you know, they're not ready for that, or that's not part of their mission. So you can choose which pieces of this are actually installed and available to your users. It's not forced for everything. There are also two different types of licenses available. There is a subscription term license, and so you can pay for this for 12 months or several years, and renew that subscription as you use the product. Or there are perpetual licenses, as we have today for these part numbers. So just a quick example, I won't go through this in too much detail, but just so you get an idea from some of the additional simplification, that a user is defined through their security profile to have access to a number of capabilities within the suite, and based on their access, they would consume a number of points. And these are not, we say they're not stacked, if you will. So if I, as a user, have full access to manage in the second block down here, which now we are also including spatial linear calibration and scheduling capabilities for that user. They can also, with the same 10 points, also access health. So when I log in, 10 points are consumed, and I can access anything in that bar. We don't keep adding 10 points every time you go to a different block, right? It's 10 points for everything in that block. And so there are levels, there's limited. We will still continue to support the self-service user that doesn't require any entitlement, and also have, a premium app point for our industry solutions. So there are some changes to that model, and our sellers are educated on this, and we hope to help our customers understand and translate as they move forward and look at an upgrade path to 8.0 on how their current usage translates into an appropriate number of application points. And they are monitored, so there is this notion of tracking consumption and being able to have a choice of whether you will have a hard restriction on, if there are no app points available, whether you stop people from logging in, or whether that's something that is monitored and then rectified later. So that is a question that we get often as well. So okay, so I just wanted to spend, and I think I spent a decent amount of time on these in the initial sort of the journey map flow, but making sure that people see some of the value in some of these other applications and the new capabilities. So Monitor, again, it's a very configurable dashboard. It really makes the setting up and connecting any device that might be, I want to use monitoring when we talk about Monitor, but being able to take the readings from even an installed device that's been added to an asset and setting up in here the different ways that you can understand where there's anomalies within that data, right? So you've got to have some, like we do today, like condition points where we know what's normal, what's outside of a range of normal. But again, it's more of the combination, right? It's not just the vibration, it's the vibration plus the temperature, plus the operating state, plus where it is in the country, you know, the temperature, all kinds of things, right, can together say, okay, now we know we have a problem, right? It's just not that one data point that's been alerting me. I need to bring that together and put it in a dashboard that I can navigate and that can bring forward to me where there's things that need my attention, and have the connection directly to manage, to EAM, to be able to create a service request and have someone go look further into that issue. Okay, so that's Monitor. And Health. So again, and you're starting to see some of our new design work. I haven't mentioned sort of the focus on modernization, right? So there's, I'll talk about it later when we talk about mobile, but there's also an effort to have a consistent design pattern. So we are all looking at this pattern library. Anytime a developer goes and needs to create a new application or a new screen, that these, you know, how a table window is displayed or how an action is taken, what a button looks like, is now shared. And so the experience for the end user as they might navigate between these applications will be consistent. So, you know, thinking about costs of training and adoption, etc. So again, we're looking here at the health score. More someone who's going to be saying, for all of my robot arms, you know, in a site or in this plant or globally in my region, let me understand how they've been performing. And based on a score that I've determined, again, combining some different things, remaining useful life, you know, failure data, work order history, etc., I can come up with a score. And this one seems pretty low, 22. I want to probably, you know, look to that next failure predicted at 90 days and say, maybe I want to pull in my PM, maybe I want to think about replacing this now, but at least I've got the information now that I can make some decisions. And then the predict piece, which I actually called out on the previous slide. So these two are very tightly woven at this point. There's becoming a blurred line of distinction between health and predict because the information is shared, combined on some of those screens. And of course, whether you've got data there or not, you can adjust these cards, whether they'll show them or not. But I think, you know, usually what I try to emphasize here is this does take a fair amount of historical data to be able to provide accurate predictions. So I always point to some of our data integrity exercises that you might want to undertake in your current environments and understand if I'm capturing the right failure, problem, cause, remedy data, the right classifications are on my assets, I, you know, have the right required fields when a work order is completed, that, you know, meter data is being captured. So that's something that you can do now to kind of help prepare for, you know, moving in this direction in the future. And we do provide a number of out-of-the-box models as well. So although there is a little bit more, you know, we say you don't need to be a data scientist, there's a little bit more requirement of understanding how some of that works. But like I said, we do provide a starting point for some of these, and also point to the digital twin as a place for people to share models and things like this if they have for a certain, from an OEM, from a certain asset class, etc. Okay, the visual inspection piece. So I've been learning more about this, and do like their quick ROI story, being able to kind of set this up and do a quick POC and show some value in a very short, even 24-hour period if you are focused, right? They talk about going out in the morning and taking a bunch of photos of a couple of some assets of the road, of, you know, something that you want to train the model on. Spend the afternoon having the model be trained on, this is what it looks like broken, this is what it looks like working, or this is a crack in a road, and this is a, you know, asphalt, and this is good asphalt. And then, you know, deploying that and showing the team the next day how just feeding in some information that it can detect where there are problems. So we're doing a lot of work here around our civil infrastructure product. So we talk about these, you know, giant, huge suspension bridges that are over in the Nordics, and using, you know, as I mentioned, using drones to take those photos rather than sending. It could take a person, you know, a full year to inspect by hand from one end to the other of a bridge. You just end up going back and forth. So being to automate some of that brings a lot of value to maintaining those assets that are, you know, really so critical. And if there are problems there, can lead to loss of life. So, all right. One more that I don't think I've mentioned yet is around safety. So this has been part of our IoT story for quite a while. We talk about another way to get real-time data from wearables. So this is part of the suite. This is another place where we can introduce into your environment the tracking of safety procedures, I'll say, around an individual. There are some questions sometimes we get around privacy, but setting up the shields within this tool to monitor, say, a person's heart rate isn't their actual heart rate. It could be on a scale, and if it goes above, you know, 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, then someone should be alerted. We should track them. We also talk about a lot of the COVID-19 cases and back to work and making sure that people are wearing masks, that they're distant. There are ways that you can monitor where a person is in the organization, in the plant. If they get into an area where they're supposed to have safety gear, if we're monitoring carbon monoxide levels, etc. So there's also a big tie here to the HSE product as well. Okay, so let me do a couple minutes on mobility. I think I'm okay for time. That's why I'm just checking my clock over here. So really trying to focus on additional capabilities for the technician. So, you know, we've had mobile solutions for many, many years, but now as we expand into some new technology like AI and AR, we can get these technicians the right information at the right time. We can get them connected with other subject matter experts, other people that can help them when they're out at the point of failure, so that we can have, you know, improved first-time fix rates. We've got a lot more digital information about this asset available from the digital twin. There's lots of information from monitoring that I can get to the information coming in from sensors. I can keep them safe. So as we work towards sort of delivering this experience for the modern sort of mobile user who's got expectations about how those interfaces work and how the devices respond, we've got this 3-phased mobility evolution that we have started down this path. And as I said, the Anywhere to Maximo Mobile is a bit about branding and a lot about technology. So when it comes to licensing, there's a bridge there that will get you from one to the other. There's a path forward. So the first step is around re-architecting. We want to build that mobile foundation that is the foundation for the future, and use it for you know, more of our Maximo applications to support disconnected and connected capabilities, as well as a configurable environment that can be future-proofed. We need to release the new mobile experience using some of the, not only the foundation, but new technology to deliver the user experience. And then execute on a roadmap so that we can then quickly deliver lots of mobile capabilities over the next several releases, the next several years. So let's just get into what each of those means. The first step of re-architecting was delivered early last year when we invested in the Anywhere platform and eliminated that mobile first server. So we've got this stateless architecture. We were really focused on ease of deployment and install, scalability, serviceability, the single administration application, and started working on some additional user experience enhancements like push notifications that are now embedded inherent to the Maximo platform, I'll say. Some of that is set up in core. So that's step one. That has been delivered. We've had many of our mobile customers already adopt and are successfully using and happy with the new architecture. The second step is the release. And so later this month, which is this week really, should be the first release of Maximo Mobile. We talk about the investment in the development platform and the new modernization, not only of the experience, but the technology itself, moving away from the technology that was used to graphite. And that's our new strategic application development platform. It will be used for, it's being used for some of the health screens and across the application suite, I'll say. So some configuration, a couple of the applications, and as we'll see in the roadmap that we are making this available as an option for our 7612 customers to be able to move to this mobile option without moving necessarily to the application suite, right? So there's a ability to coexist for some time and get the benefits of these capabilities. So what is it? It's a single application. You can see it's going to have access to all of the different capabilities as we add different options like safety and assist over time. There will be configurability. It supports connected and disconnected mode. And we're able now under our control to expand even to not only Apple or Google Play Store, but also Microsoft. So having a broad options for platform support. It is providing the technology of AI and AR. So there's applications here for AR collaboration. So you see that in the front. You can see that Mike Bernstein is talking to Eli Burton. They've reached out. He is identified as an expert on this pump. I'm here trying to uncouple the power panel and I'm not really sure what to do. The instructions aren't clear. I can mark this up. I can take a photo or a video, put some comments. I can send it to Eli. He can put the arrow where I should be working and give me some additional instruction. And then the great thing with this too is now I've got documented photo, video, some additional steps that I can even add to my job plan library, right? This becomes part of the standard practice for repairing this asset. The AI is more on digitization of documentation. So I might have a whole bunch of manuals back at the shop, and there's all kinds of data that I didn't have access to when I was remote in the past. This gives me ability to natural voice language search through that documentation, give me information on a centrifugal pump oil change, and it will come back with some, with a 72% confidence, I think this document will help you with your problem, right? So kind of like, I don't know, I comparing to Googling something, right? Not always the first 3 things that come up are exactly what you're looking for, but at least you've got some options. So enabling some new technology. not just a work order application, right? We want to leverage some of our existing Maximo capabilities, but we want to add in things like route optimization and the AI that I just mentioned, some step-by-step resources, really walk someone through the steps that they need to take, and support the connected and disconnected mode, which has been one of the requirements that we've had for the inspection application since the work centers were delivered. So, okay, phase 3, keep an eye on the time. So we really do want to aggressively deliver the 9 anywhere applications and deliver them all through the Maximo mobile interface and platform within a relatively short amount of time. I don't know, maybe I'll give it 18 months. How's that? But I know that I've seen the roadmap, and once we can get the first few and using the repeatable design patterns, right, our service requests are coming next. Then we'll start looking at some of the storeroom counts and issues and returns, transfers, and then assets, right? So all of those things. And as I mentioned, there will be coexistence. So for some time, you might have an individual technician who will still do their physical counts. They won't be doing a physical count. There'll be some users that are using the anywhere applications to perform their work, and others that might be using the newer Maximo mobile applications as it fits, right? So that is an option. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Over time, we see that everything would move. This was just a little bit more on the design pattern. I think I've talked about this enough, and I should probably get an updated screenshot, but I'm seeing now as you navigate between different applications and new applications that this is really helping with some of those decisions. The modernization and the patterns that we're deciding here will also be applied to the 8.4 mass, the application suite EAM piece. So let me see if I can say that more clearly. So the Maximo that we know today, EAM, which is now referred to as Manage, will have a new skin with 8 that will also align with the design patterns that we're using for some of these newer applications. And so that brings me to just to give you a little insight into what an upgrade might look like, or what the changes might be. And it's not as much maybe as you think. So right from the top, that overall it's going to be the Maximo that we know today, but delivered within the suite, leveraging some of the OpenShift capabilities, leveraging WAS Liberty, using some new integration capabilities that are delivered as part of that technical model. But the database, the data model will be the same. The applications will work the way they do today. So you can see here there'll be new options in the bottom left. So the modernized experience, I talked about, there'll be a new skin that will align with the way things look. The new mobile experience, which we saw that one screenshot of. There's some improved serviceability that's coming, some new install and configuration, and how you manage users will be done at the application suite level. So some things to learn, but we're working on our documentation and getting these things available so that people can start to get their hands on and understand what those changes are, and you know, the timeline. So I guess the timeline is the other thing. You know, continuing to invest in core over time. Checking my time again. So I'm coming up, and I know I had a little extra time, but so I mentioned this, the Manage EAM, the top right box is the release for the end of April, where we'll see the first instance of the Maximo EAM delivered within the application suite. In the bottom center, you can see where I mentioned mobile supported for 7612. That was aligning with this 8.3 release of the suite. And we are working on a 7613 version of Maximo, which will really be a fixed pack essentially. Our focus, our investment going forward will be on the application suite deliverable. So we will maintain 7613, we'll make fixes, we will deliver minor enhancements and currency updates. So if we need to test on new platforms, new versions of say DB2 Oracle, etc., that will come. But the 7.6.0 version was announced for end of service, will be effective September of this year. 7.6.1 will be in market. The dates that we are now discussing is 2025. So that is a good 4 years away, and we still will have the 3 years extended. And the release 8 life cycle it changes a bit. So we'll have to get a new chart that describes that, but it does move away from the 5+3 to a 3+2 life cycle. And with the development changes and agile and being able to do continuous delivery, there will be quarterly updates of the application suite. Whether we are included in each of those is to be seen, but that's the timeline we're looking at currently. All right, I think that was it. I had some links for some of the community where we've moved some of the wiki data. Make sure that you're registered there so that you can get access to that. You do have to become a member to get in and join the discussions and so forth. So that was just what I was highlighting there. So you can see once you get into, say, the scheduler sub-community, there's discussions and a library of information that was previously found on DevWorks. Okay, how did I do? Even with my extra time, I still just made it, Mike. Good thing I had the extra time. Worked
just
out
like
perfectly.
it was planned. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you. And again, there have been a few questions that have come through. And
Great.
if you do have questions, we'll get those addressed at the Q&A session. So Kim will stick around and be present for that to answer those questions.
Can you get me to stop sharing? Because somehow I lost my mouse again.
Sure.
Can you kick me off? Okay.
Turn that off.
Thank you.
And
Unmuted.
I'm actually going to switch presenter over to Scott. Scott's going to be coming up here shortly. Scott Yates. But before we get him going, I do have a couple of additional polls as a follow-up to Kim's presentation. Just want to know, how are you using your Maximo system? What are you using it, or what types of assets are you managing? So facilities, HVAC systems, production assets, and that could be manufacturing or industrial production, infrastructure, roads, bridges, as Kim was describing, other linear assets, roads, runways, pipeline, things like that. Fleet, you're managing your fleet with Maximo. And a lot of people are managing inventory in association with work orders, managing all the stuff that you're using, managing costs, because that's what it's really all about.
And unfortunately, our poll, you can only select one, because I know many of you support probably a few of these options.
Oh, did we not select it for multiple? Here, let me see if I can. Nope, you should be able to use multiple answers on that, I believe. All right, so
after submission, right? You cannot, obviously.
All right, a couple more seconds. And again, thank you, Kim. It's always great to get the latest and greatest.
Yeah, good info.
All right, close that. So as suspected, mainly facilities. Everybody's using it for that. Lots of infrastructure, linear assets, great. And inventory, number 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. And kind of in preparation of what Scott's going to be talking about, I'm going to throw one more up just to get an idea of who's using IoT out there in the Maximo space. Something that IBM has been focusing on with Monitor, getting more into the predictive maintenance space.
Just adding a note to Kim's presentation too, end of service life for 760, September 21st. So keep that in mind.
All right, we'll give you a couple more seconds here. All right. So not many people using it, 50% of the respondents. And a few people think of witchcraft. All right, excellent. Well, this is a perfect presentation for those groups in particular.
Agreed.
All right, so I will introduce Scott Yates here. He's also going to do the spotlight for EDI, considering he is one of the principals at EDI. Been at EDI for quite a while. So off to you, Scott.
All right, thanks, Michael, and thank you to both Michael and Scott for hosting this. Very honored to be a part of the Pacific Maximo Users Group and part of this distinguished panel. As a sponsor, I get the opportunity to talk about ourselves just a little bit, so I'm gonna take that opportunity, but I'll keep it brief so we can get into talking about the witchcraft. I am Scott Yates, Chief Operating Officer for EDI. We are an Aurora company, so those of you who may be familiar with us, but maybe not our most recent history, we were acquired in 2019 by Aurora Engineers, which is a full-service design and build and manage engineering firm. Also has a geospatial group and a systems development group. So we kind of fit right into their overall portfolio to really kind of fill a gap in the overall asset life cycle. So within the Aurora organization now, we have people who deal with every phase of the asset life cycle, from design and conception of a facility and a system all the way through to operation and maintenance and ultimately decommissioning of those systems and facilities. And what that's allowed us to do is really become a geospatial and IoT-based asset data management collection of experts, and we bring that expertise to the projects that we deliver. We at EDI have been doing Maximo for 20 years as an organization, and while we do a lot of things outside of Maximo specifically, a large percentage of our portfolio centers around Maximo as the enterprise asset management system. So, we do a lot of things related to geospatial, IoT, et cetera, but most of it centers around Maximo as an EAM. So we really understand it inside and out, and how these other pieces kind of bolt onto it or integrate with it. We're an IBM partner and reseller. We work in the aviation industry very heavily, life sciences very heavily as well, public utilities as well, but we do work in just about all verticals. Those just happen to be the ones that we have the highest percentage of our portfolio. Soup to nuts consulting firm. We do assessments, consulting, implementations, upgrades, data walkdown services, data loading, training, ongoing enhanced support, level 1, level 2 support, and integration services. We also have several solutions that we've developed and some that we've developed in conjunction with Aurora. Strategic asset management. So our ECAM solution is a pre-configured version of Maximo with workflows, screens, security groups, all of that pre-configured, and gives you kind of a fast start into best practices. Our SuiteRec tool is a work requesting tool that you can open up to the entire organization, wizard-based, to feed your Maximo system. And then Atlas is the newest product. It's a mobile integration platform. It's geospatial centric delivery of work management inspections. So it's a mobile product for Maximo, but it is really system agnostic. You can integrate it with any of your enterprise level systems. Just so you understand what we're focused on and what we see as the trends in the market. We believe mobile enablement is critical. You can see in IBM's roadmap, it's in alignment with what IBM is thinking. Just about everything we implement, deploy, as we move forward with enterprise asset management has to be thinking about mobile enablement to be successful. We strongly believe that geospatial-based asset management is critical, especially for some of the industries you saw that we serve. We think more and more customers are requiring that they have the geospatial context at their fingertips as they're performing work, be that GIS or BIM. And then we also believe software as a service obviously is an increasing trend. And so, it's a focus of ours to provide customers with an option to, certainly have their system on premise if they want it, but also be able to move that to the cloud and enable that capability. Data interoperability is becoming more and more critical. The ability to seamlessly integrate the data that we're receiving from building information models as facilities are built and pull that into our GIS systems or enterprise asset management systems and seamlessly be able to move that data around those systems is critical. And from a technology standpoint, it's actually not quite the witchcraft it used to be, but it's all predicated on having good discipline and data standards to make it happen. So that's something that we help our customers with. And then of course, IoT integration. This all has to be plugged into our ever increasing portfolio of smart assets to be able to take that information, be able to do more with less. And that's the great segue into what I'm going to be presenting here today, which is a project that we're actually just now wrapping up with Seattle Tacoma Airport. Critical asset monitoring using IoT. SeaTac is a longtime customer of Maximo. And so, of course, as they ventured into this IoT space for asset management, Maximo is going to be a big part of how that was delivered at their organization. So today what I'm going to talk about is I'm just briefly, I think everyone understands the basics of it, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, remind everybody what IoT is when we say IoT. Talk about the idea of a proof of value project, which is what we did at the SeaTac Airport, and I think is the perfect way. Some of the people who responded to the poll, not doing it as well as they could, or it's witchcraft. I think this type of approach is a great way to start to move into leveraging IoT. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to present SeaTac specific use cases that they implemented as a part of this project. We're going to talk about the technical infrastructure that's in place to support that. A lot of this is going to be in alignment with what you saw in Kim's presentation. And then I am going to go inside one of our demo environments that's receiving some of the live data from the sensors they have out at SeaTac, so you can kind of see at least a snapshot of how this all comes in. So what is IoT? Quite simply, IoT stands for Internet of Things. It's connecting assets, things, to a network. That's when we say IoT, that's what we mean. Whether we're talking about IoT in your home or a facility, it's just stuff connected to the network. Now, why do we want stuff connected to a network? We do this to communicate information they've collected or receive information and act on it. So it's really about communication, being able to get data from one place to another to make better decisions and have better reactions. It also gives us the ability to interject data analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning to improve those responses. So we can collect the data in real time, we can process it a lot faster, and then we can make quicker decisions and have quicker reactions. And so from an asset management standpoint with IoT, it's about monitoring conditions, analyzing that data, and then ultimately acting. At the end of the day, that act is important. All this should be driving action, otherwise it's just noise. So goals for SeaTac's project specifically, you know, they found themselves, it's really interesting because when they started this project versus when we've completed this project, the kind of the drivers and objectives changed across that time frame for obvious reasons because of the pandemic, but the need for IoT didn't. Even in both ends of the spectrum, there was still a need for IoT. So they originally embarked on this project because of growing pressures on the airport, aging facility, but also an expanding facility, increased customer demand and increased customer expectations for what the customer experience is at an airport. And so, you know, they felt IoT was a way that they could address these challenges. Now, as the pandemic hit, what became a lot more important was being able to do more with less, and then also ensuring a safe and clean facility. And when you look at those challenges, again, IoT is right at the forefront of being able to meet those needs as well. So even as the operating environment changed dramatically over the life of this project, the need for IoT and the drive behind this didn't change at all. And so their specific goals is they wanted to identify opportunities to improve customer experience, improve asset reliability, and ultimately find places where they can improve efficiencies in their asset management processes. They also, as a part of this, and I think this is what was really intelligent about their approach, I'm going to talk about it more in detail, but they wanted to establish a scalable infrastructure and a repeatable methodology for rolling out IoT initiatives. So they wanted to make sure that as they did this, they were laying the groundwork to be able to expand on it into other areas of the organization and really create a playbook for being able to repeat this process and expand it over time. And certainly they wanted quick wins with noticeable results. They knew, you know, they weren't going to be given a lot of runway, pardon the pun, to just play around with this technology. And so they had to deliver a return on investment right with the initial pilot. So the right approach was a proof of value approach. And so we like to use that term versus proof of concept. We know IoT, what it is and that it works, but you know, when we look at a specific customer, we really want to do what we call a proof of value. We want to demonstrate that it actually solves a problem for that customer. So we want to start small, but we want to do so with the future state in mind, potential scalability. The proof of value is going to have deliverables that are beyond just a technology solution. So you're going to solve a specific use case. You're going to get early win that builds momentum. You're going to document the project methodology as you do that, so that success is repeatable and can be applied to the next use case or the next issue. And you're going to test the IT infrastructure so the success is scalable. This was a big one for SeaTac Airport. Bringing in IoT introduces all sorts of network security questions about, you know, whether we can support this and whether we can do so safely. And so having the ability to kind of test out, you know, some of those assumptions and get comfortable with the fact that, you know, you could do this was important. The benefits of this approach is there's a smaller initial investment with a direct return on investment. There's smaller barrier to entry on the next project because you're building off the business case and you have the processes and the technology already in place, and you get increased momentum towards that next project. So it was really a great approach and one that we've seen a lot of success with as far as venturing into IoT. So specifically, I have an entire presentation I do around how to select use cases for IoT, but just to boil it down in a nutshell, basically we just sat around and talked about the problems that the airport has, whether they be operational or maintenance, just what are the challenges facing the airport, and then we scored those based on, you know, how severe is the problem, how frequent is the problem, and how detectable is the problem? Is it a candidate for IoT? And so at the end of that process, where we settled was on their HVAC systems. And we actually identified that there was several use cases that we could hit all in one shot, deploying IoT around the HVAC system. So the first use case was to optimize filter inspection and replacement. So how we're doing this is by monitoring differential pressure automatically versus how they used to do it manually, but monitoring differential pressure across the filter bank to automatically detect as there's a degradation and a blockage in those filters and prioritize when they need to be changed. So the results that we're expecting here obviously are fewer unnecessary replacements, replacing them just based on a time-based schedule too often, fewer overdue replacements because we get backed up and can't get to them quick enough, and the thing gets too blocked up before we're able to change it out, and then improved efficiencies in the work execution process. As I mentioned before, this replaces a manual inspection that they were doing on a time-based schedule, and so now that can be completely eliminated from their asset management routine. The second use case we're doing while we're in there, we're looking at the HVAC system, so what else can we do while we're in there, is monitoring fan motor conditions. And so we're doing this by monitoring the vibration and the temperature on the fan motors, both the supply and return for these units. And why we're doing this is to automatically detect motor health, basically create a profile for each one of these motors, and then we can track anomalies to drive a maintenance response. As we veer away from what looks like a healthy motor, we can enact proactive responses to go see why the vibration is increasing above normal, or why the temperature is increasing above normal. So the expectation here is fewer equipment failures and fewer unnecessary maintenance activities. And then a really interesting one, which was super low-hanging fruit while we're out there, is they have the main terminal in particular is an older facility, very old drainage systems that are buried in concrete slabs, and they had issues where, particularly in the summer months where it got particularly humid, the condensate just starts flowing out of these machines, and if there was a blockage in the pipe, very difficult to see, detect, get to, there's a blockage in the pipe, these drains would back up and these areas would start to flood. And these are very low traffic areas up in a mezzanine. So if that water was allowed to just sit and back up and nobody sees it, eventually it would actually seep through the concrete. And there's several instances of obviously some unpleasant experiences by tenants because of that. And so very simple IoT solution was to be able to put water detection sensors right where these drains are, so we could automatically detect if water was starting to collect in that space. It could proactively get a technician out there to address that issue. So this is the portfolio of what we aim to address with the IoT proof of value. So talking a little bit about the architecture overview, we retrofitted sensors onto these air handling units. There's a couple reasons for doing this. The first reason was around security. They do have building control systems in place that monitor these assets, turn them on, turn them off, but they didn't want us touching those for understandable reasons. Those networks, those systems are actually on completely air-gapped systems that they don't allow any sort of external access to the internet to, because they want to protect those systems against attack. And so that was one reason that we started going down the path of retrofitting. The other was that the sensors in place, in a lot of cases, were pretty rudimentary. Help them control when to go on, when to go off, but not sophisticated enough, particularly from a vibration standpoint, to give us information that would be useful for reactive and predictive maintenance. So the other decision we made at this time, since we were retrofitting, is we went with a single platform, a single brand of sensors and gateways. And so for those of you that aren't familiar, sensors are the things out on the asset collecting the data. Gateways are basically routers that communicate with the sensors to get the data, aggregate it, and then communicate it wherever it needs to go. In this case, we were using IBM Monitor. So the data was coming from these gateways, gets aggregated in the Monitor product, which is out in the cloud. We're using a cellular connection to do that, again, because of security concerns on their part. They didn't want communication happening on their local area networks with this stuff, and going out to the World Wide Web. So we use cellular to send the data up to the cloud, IBM Monitor, and then we're actually, the arrow's kind of in the wrong direction on that last piece. Again, because of those security concerns, we've got Maximo Asset Health Insights installed on their Maximo environment. That is actually querying the monitor system to pull that data into it to do whatever reactive work orders we need to do, to fire off PMs, to do the asset health dashboards that we see inside of Maximo. But this is very typical of what an IoT architecture is going to look like. You're going to have the sensors out at the edge. You're going to have the gateways doing the communication to get that data. You're going to have some level of a IoT management platform to manage those devices and to aggregate that data. And then, of course, you're going to have systems like Maximo, could be other systems as well, that are using that data to support decision making or reactive actions. So for Seattle specifically, some of the new software components that were put in place to support all this, one, I'm on it. So that was the brand of sensors and gateways that we ended up deploying. We did that just for ease of deployment. They're basically plug and play type sensors. You turn them on, you turn on the gateway, they know each other, and everything's off and running. So we used iMonit, and it has a cloud component to be able to manage those devices. So the primary function is just to get the sensors and gateways set up. You do have the ability through that tool to visualize raw sensor data. Typically, we wouldn't go into that though unless there's a problem, because you don't want to have to log into, as you scale this into 50 different systems, depending on the sensors you're looking at to look at this data. That's the power behind Monitor, and ultimately things like Asset Health Insights, is I can have it all coming into one place to look. So we also implemented Monitor cloud version. Primary function here is to aggregate that data, organize that data, kind of cleanse and structure it. So, construct Maximo ready messages. So we could take that data and package it the way we wanted to consume it in the Maximo system. Monitor also has the capability to visualize this data. And I would see people going into Monitor probably more often than I'm on it, but really we tried to design the solution so they'd never have to leave Maximo, which brings me into the last two components. Out of standard Maximo, this whole infrastructure leverages functionality you're probably already very familiar with: meters and condition monitoring. Ultimately, these are meter readings, right, that we're pulling into Maximo. So we're feeding meters on these assets to be able to see that data. And we're setting up condition monitoring points to be able to react to thresholds or alarm conditions that are coming in from these sensors. So we're receiving and storing the sensor data, analyzing that data against thresholds using simple condition monitoring, and then generating work orders or PMs when necessary, depending on the particular use case. The final component here that was introduced to them as a part of this project is Asset Health Insights in Maximo. And Kim, showed some of this before. We're going to take a live look at the dashboard in a couple minutes here. But the primary function here is to, take that data that's coming in from these sensors and potentially other sources as well, and periodically score the asset health. For that asset. Take all these factors that you care about into consideration, give that asset a score so you can keep an eye on how these things are behaving, and become proactive about, where you do your, maintenance investment. So all of this was brand new to SeaTac. It all went live in their production environment in December of 2020. When we look just kind of a pictorial view of how this all comes together, so monitors sitting out in the cloud, aggregating this data, that's getting fed into meters inside of Maximo. Those meters are associated with assets. Condition monitoring points are tied to some of these meters to be able to act on the data specific to an asset, specific to a good, bad condition. And then those are tied to job plans and PMs, which ultimately fire work orders. Now, in parallel, at the same time, this data is being fed into the Reliability Engineering Work Center, which is where you see Maximo Asset Health Insights. That's the end user's portal into MAHI, is the Reliability Engineering Work Center. So this gives the ability to score, visualize the health of the asset, both based on the meter data as well as any other information you want to pull in. And that's, of course, tied to specific assets. Now, both of these can generate work orders ultimately. Condition monitoring does so in an automatic fashion. I exceed the threshold, I automatically generate a work order with the job plan or generate a PM tied to that condition monitoring point. From the Reliability Engineering Work Center, I can manually do it. So as I'm monitoring the health of an asset, if something looks bad to me, right from there, I could kick off a work order process to go take a look at that particular asset. So just kind of a pictorial view of how this stuff comes together on the Maximo side. And, with the elements that, again, this isn't witchcraft, with elements that you're already comfortable with on the Maximo side, and the introduction maybe of the Reliability Engineering Work Center. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at some live data. So just a little disclosure here. This is not Seattle's Maximo environment. This is an EDI demo environment. Again, similar to what we talked about earlier. We wouldn't take you directly into their system. However, we are receiving, and we've abstracted to some degree, we're receiving some of the sensor data that's coming in live. So the data that you're looking at is live data. Apologize, I got timed out here. So it is live data from their actual sensors at their airport. However, how it's being represented in the system as far as what assets it's tied to is not entirely accurate. It's real data. And it's also not a complete picture of all the data they're pulling in. I just pulled in a few slices of it. But as we look at the Reliability Engineering Work Center, the way we organize this is, we create essentially saved queries. They're called cards, but they're saved queries to say, hey, I want to monitor this type of asset. So I want to create a dashboard for this type of asset. So you can see, as a part of this proof of value project, we are monitoring at the air handler level itself, and that's what we're tying the filter readings into. And then we're also monitoring at the motor level. And that's where we're looking at both vibration and at temperature. And so just kind of the layout here, what you see is, as I isolate one of those saved queries, I'm seeing the specific assets that are tied to that query in my card stack on the left-hand side. I'm seeing some basic details about each one of those assets, but I'm also seeing a score. I'm also seeing the current score that the system has assigned based on the scoring methods that we've set up. And you have the ability to define what those scoring methods are. Is it all meter-based? Is some of it based on age? Is some of it based on failure history, et cetera? And this is something also that we're starting out simply for SeaTac, and really keying off the meter data. One of the things, in order to fully do predictive maintenance, as Kim alluded to, it requires very good failure data history. So it's difficult to predict failure just from a meter reading. You need to be able to correlate those readings with historical failures. That's how the algorithms work. And so these are some of the things we're working on with the airport, so that they can kind of build off this and actually take this from being purely reactive into predictive as well. But I see that score on the left-hand side. You see there's a map capability. Again, this is a demo environment, but a map capability, so where we can actually pinpoint those assets spatially on a map as to where I have problems and where things are looking good. And then, of course, I've got also a summary on the right-hand side here of, hey, of all the things that I'm monitoring in this particular card set, how many of them are good, fair, poor, et cetera. And this is all great and very nice from a visualization standpoint, just to be able to quickly see, hey, this is how stuff looks. But what I want to point out is there's a whole lot going on behind each one of these scores. So if I actually drill into one of these fan motors by clicking on it, it's going to take me to the next level of detail. And so I'm going to have the ability to see, okay, what are the specific drivers that are driving that overall asset health score? And again, this is real data coming in from the SeaTac sensors. Literally today, there's data coming in. But we've simplified for demo purposes, what the scoring method is and what we're showing. So for this example, all we're doing is scoring based off of vibration, and specifically the root mean square velocity. And so we've got a tri-axis vibration sensor out there, and so it's measuring the root mean square velocity, the movement, both in the X, the Y, and the Z directions. And so we're pulling each one of those factors in and scoring those elements, and then combining those to give an overall score on this particular unit. So right now this unit is looking good. If I want confirmation of that, I can actually, right from this dashboard, see the meter readings that back all of this. And what's really cool about this is, yes, it obviously brings in the meter readings that are driving the score, but it is also saying, hey, there's additional meters on this asset. I'm going to go ahead and show all of them to you. And so this gives you kind of a snapshot into all of the information we're actually pulling in from these vibration sensors. I'm getting all of these points of data on this. In this case, it's a return fan motor for a specific air handling unit. I'm getting temperature on that motor. I'm getting the X, Y, and Z crest values. I'm getting the X, Y, and Z frequency values, and then I'm getting the X, Y, and Z RMS velocity. And then there's actually several more data points that we're pulling into monitor. We're just not currently pulling into all the way into Maximo. So I have all of this data at my fingertips, and the color coding is fantastic as well, right? Because for the things I have condition monitoring points on, I can see, okay, you know, my temperature's in the green, my X, Y, and Z RMS velocities are all in the green. Now, you know, I can go even a level lower than this. Let's say, you know, I want to look at maybe this X is, I think it's creeping up. I can't remember, but, you know, that looks a little bit higher than the last time I looked at this. I can actually drill into that specific meter reading, and then I can look at, you know, the detail of that meter reading over time. And so I see what the current reading is. I see the rules that are coming in from my condition monitoring point, so I can see at what point I would be taking action and what action I'd be taking. So it's showing here that if this goes above 6, then I'm going to generate a work order using the fan motor vibration investigation job plan, right? And it's going to do that automatically. So I can see what the response would be if I violate. And then I can come down here and I can look at the history. I can actually see the specific data points that have been brought into Maximo and compare those with the upper and lower action limits. So yeah, maybe I'm inside my warning limits, but I can see that there's a trend heading up towards that upper warning limit. I may want to get out ahead of that, and from down here, you know, take action and generate a work order. So this is incredibly powerful. I'm just going to back out of this one a little bit here. Let's take a look at an air handler, and let's go ahead and grab one of these first ones. Again, we're doing, for the demo purposes, just taking very simple data in for scoring. But what we're monitoring here is the differential pressure across the filter bank on this air handling unit. Same situation. If I want to drill into this score, I can drill into this score and see the actual meter readings that we're pulling in from the sensors associated with the air handling unit level. So I see my differential pressure is at 0.3 inches of water. We are pulling in an air temperature because the sensor gives it to us. We're not doing anything with that because there's not really any failure modes that we care about in relation to that. And then you'll notice, I should have mentioned, I don't have it in the scoring, but this is also where we're pulling in the water detection reading as well. So we see right now that's a false. This is a simple sensor sitting at the drain that says there's either water collecting there or there isn't. And if water collects, it would kick off a work order. If it's not getting any readings, it's false. And again, I can dive into differential pressure. This is something that I would expect to see go up over time, over a long period of time, to drive when I would want to change my filter. As it becomes more blocked, the difference between the pressures on both sides of the filter bank are going to go up and down. You do see here we've got some basically zero readings. Most likely that is related to when the unit was off. And so, one of the things we're actually looking at is putting logic on the monitor side to filter out those situations, saying, hey, I don't care about this data when the machine's not running. But just wanted to give you a tour, of how they're leveraging this and using this. Again, the benefit that they're getting out of this is they're avoiding those potential flood situations which have occurred to them in the past. They are just right off the bat, already now, day one, they have reduced their maintenance spend related to these units because they're not having to go out and do the time-based manual inspection for differential pressure on the replacement of their filters. So when that filter degrades, it's going to automatically kick off the PMs they already had in place to replace that filter, and those ones are going to jump to the top of the queue because they're going to be driven. They're driven by real data. And then for the motors, that one is more of a work in progress, right? They're taking the first step to being able to create a profile of what normal operating conditions are for that motor. They're going to start to collect better failure data against those motors, and so ultimately they'll be able to bring that together and utilize the predictive solution that IBM has to line up that data and try and predict when those motors might fail. And right now we're starting to look at the success of this and starting to talk about expanding this project to more units throughout the facility, and also starting to look at what are those 2 and 3 challenges on their list that we captured that might be a good candidate for IoT. So I'm going to go ahead and break it off right there. Michael, I think I kept us relatively close to on time, and hand it back over to you.
No, you are spot on. Thanks, Scott. It's good to see a Maximo customer getting some value out of their system like that. So great presentation. And again, if you have any questions for Scott, throw those in the question pane, and Scott will get to those shortly at the Q&A session.
Yeah, great presentation, Scott.
So this would be the time that we would have Rick Crory doing his sponsor spotlight. Unfortunately, there is a nasty storm going through the Northern California area, and Rick got called away to address some issues at home. So I don't have his slide deck, but I figured I would throw his contact information up. If you have a need to reach out to Corey, we thank him for contributing to this group and sponsoring this group. He's been in the Maximo space for a really long time, is a great resource for Maximo. So thank you, Rick. All right, so with that, our last presentation of the day, I will pass this over to John with IBM to talk a little bit about weather.
Great segue.
You see my screen okay?
Yeah, we can, John.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. This is my first Maximo Users Group, and whoops, I need to share my webcam. There we go.
There you are.
First Maximo Users Group, and very excited to be here. Great presentations. Scott, that was an excellent presentation that you just gave on SeaTac. That was really cool to see. So I'm kind of the new kid on the block within the part of IBM where Maximo lives, called AI Applications. The weather team just joined that group this past year, and we've been working hard to we were brought into AI Applications because there were so many synergies with the other business units in there, like Maximo, Sterling, and Tri-Riga. It was very obvious that weather had great synergy with those business units. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in the weather business and how that's tying into what you guys do at Maximo. So hopefully it'll be quick and informative for you. The weather company, we started with a simple mission: keeping people safe and informed. It really grew into a decision solution company. I mean, you'll see as I get through the presentation, we do weather data and weather forecast information at enormous scale. We're doing more than 50 billion requests a day on our data centers, delivering this up to customers all over the globe. So processing ridiculous amounts of data each day and serving that up and doing so in a customer enjoyable fashion. So really doing what we can to keep our users happy out there, both on the business side and on the commercial side. Weather, why we do this is because weather impacts, every business, every person. As you just heard, it impacted Rick Crory. Weather knocked out, power in his area and caused some concern. That happens to companies, that happens to individuals. It isn't just, severe weather and adverse conditions. It's every type of weather has ramifications. Lack of precip causes drought conditions, impacts agriculture. Hot temperatures can cause, equipment failures, also cause droughts, can cause heat stress on livestock. You don't have to think too far to realize how those impacts propagate throughout the global economy. We did a survey through the Institute of Business Value a few years back, over 1,000 C-level executives across the globe. And to take note here is, 100% of them believe that weather impacted at least one cost driver and one revenue driver within their organization. And they 99% believe that improved weather insights could help them reduce their annual operating costs. So it's great understanding. People understand the impact of weather, but the truth is not all businesses are implementing that and taking advantage of it. And that's kind of our mission in life, is to help businesses get there and to really deliver value to their organization, to their shareholders, and it could be, you could utilize weather in a very proactive fashion instead of it being reactive. This happened to us, now we have to respond. This could happen to us. How do we position ourselves to better handle that? One of the big things that we do is our dedication to R&D, to the science of weather, to improving forecasting, to improving running models, all of that, and that flows through to all of our customers. Scott just talked about IoT. It's not witchcraft. We've been utilizing IoT and weather for quite some time. We tie into government sensors all over the globe. We utilize data from satellites, from radar installations across the globe, not just here in North America. Actually, several years ago, we started collecting data from aircraft, over 50,000 flights a day as they, ascend and descend through the atmosphere. We're collecting, pressure and temperature readings. If you think about, when we're modeling weather, we're doing it across the entire globe and the entire atmosphere, right? And you need data. You need data to make that forecast, but we have very little data in the atmosphere. Over the U.S., they send up about 120 weather balloons twice a day to collect vertical profile information. And now we have access to 50,000 flights that are doing the same thing in much greater density. So, it really helps us having more data to improve the forecasts that go into it. And we utilize personal weather station networks, over 300,000 weather stations that people have connected to the internet that we tap into to improve our forecast. We actually also use pressure readings from mobile phones. People that have the Weather Channel app on their phone and share their location data. We collect just pressure sensor data, just another data point that we can utilize in our models. And we use AI to turn that into something, to turn all that data into forecasts. There are many different weather models out there besides the ones that we run ourselves, and we take all of those model solutions in and then intelligently combine them. We utilize humans to help verify that information, to oversee that information. There's constant learning, bias correction. In the end, everything is tuned to provide the best forecast that we can come up with for the particular parameter, for the particular location and time period that you care about. We utilize a third party to benchmark our activities, so we know how well our forecasts are doing, and we do it in 3 different parts of the globe in various timescales. Forecasts in the day 1 to 3 time frame are very different than forecasts in the 7 to 9 day time frame. And we want to know how we're doing at all times against all of those. And as you can see here in the latest group of analysis that Forecast Watch did, we continue to come up on top. We've been doing this for quite some time, and we're in close to 4,000 businesses across 70 countries that, depending on our information. I know here in North America, if you're watching a local weathercast, on your local news station, chances are the system that you see behind that weathercaster, the graphics that you see, the data that they use, even the forecasts that they come up with, are coming from us. We have great penetration in that marketplace. Also in airlines, we're providing meteorological services and forecast services, as well as data and dispatch services to 80% of the top 10 airlines. And from a mobile application, I mentioned the Weather Channel app. and weather.com, but we also supply, when you boot up your iPhone and use the native weather app, that data comes from us. Google as well, Microsoft, Yahoo, Samsung. We're kind of the overall weather source for many mobile applications. And when you have that many people out there, you have to earn their trust as well, because sometimes consumers are just as critical as a large customer is of your forecasts. And we're supporting 62 different languages. It's utilized in 178 countries, and we continue to be ranked as the #1 weather app. We have over 300 million unique users that utilize that app every month. And why is it so important? Weather is becoming more of a fabric of our society. We hear about climate change, but don't think of it in terms as it's global warming. It's climate change. Different things are happening within the climate, and one thing that we are seeing happening is a greater propensity of severe weather, where it is driving. We have higher frequency of severe weather situations, and it's and the intensity of those situations seem to be increasing over time as well. I actually have data from 2020. NOAA just released a report the week before last. Here in the United States, we had 22 weather disasters that totaled more than $1 billion of damage. The record prior to that was 16. So we shattered that record in 2020. Out on the West Coast, the most notable one was the fires that you guys had this past fall. But things from severe weather outbreaks to obviously tropical weather storms, hurricanes that hit the Gulf. It was a high hurricane activity year. It's more and more impactful, and it's like that all over the globe. When I talked about the science and talked about weather models, we released a weather model about a year and a half ago, maybe actually 2 years ago. It was announced at Think by Ginny Ramadi. The graph model is a way that we're trying to bring better weather data to the rest of the globe. So we're running weather models now at a much higher resolution and much more frequently. If you look at the two images, the best model that is currently out there is on the left, and you can see kind of coarse details like that's the subcontinent of India. So you're not seeing individual thunderstorm cells very well. When you look on the right, you could see much more detail. So that's having that detail allows us to produce better forecasts, to understand rain stop times, the intensity of the rain, and that's critical for decisions in countries where they don't have radar networks, where they don't have the same infrastructure that we have here in North America. And there's a number of advantages, but one of the cool things is we partnered with NCAR. We're running this model at 3 to 4 kilometer resolution. We're updating it every hour with kind of time steps, every 5 minutes versus every hour. And we're running it on IBM's Power 9 GPU-based system. So it's killer speed and performance to put this model together and get it out there. Yeah. Also, we worked with the National Center for Atmospheric Research to do that. I don't need to spend much time on that. But all that information, like I said, it impacts every business, right? So, I'll just have a few examples here. Won't go into great detail, but governments use this information, local, state, and local, as well as federal governments, to really understand, their relief efforts and what they have going on. We're working with oil and gas companies that are using it to understand, one, safety for their personnel, but also, potential downtime that they may have as storms come through. I mentioned we do a lot of work with airlines. So we do everything from helping them track their flights, reroute flights to avoid weather, but also to track turbulence and keep their passengers happier, keep their staff safer when they're flying throughout the air. Working with a number of agricultural interests across the globe, as we talk about sustainability and having food for the growing population, you have to do things smarter. You have to have better ways of understanding how you irrigate, where your water sources come from, when you apply, fertilizers and chemicals, and we help them with that. We mentioned, you can't watch broadcast weather without seeing our services. We're helping them tell stronger, more cohesive stories so people understand the weather risk before they leave the house each day. And we're doing a lot with insurance companies as well. They actually use it as an engagement tool, so they can send weather alerts out to users. Say, for example, in the Midwest, you can get an alert that says, hail is detected, at your location in the next 30 minutes. If they're an auto policy holder, please move your car undercover. So they keep the policyholder happy. It's a nice touch point for the insurance company, so it helps them with retention. And the side benefit is, if it's used appropriately, it helps keep their claims down as well. So now let me just transition into, I wanted to give kind of an overview of, what the weather group does and why it's important to IBM. Now I'll go into more specifically kind of how this plays within the Maximo world. So we created a very similar to what Maximo has done, an application suite of services that will tie more closely into the needs of Maximo users. So back to that CEO survey, when weather isn't kind of systematically put into an organization, those organizations don't get the full benefit of that information. They're not making better decisions. But when it is integrated, when we survey those customers that are doing it well, we found some key things. They're doing kind of 4 different things. They're visualizing their weather data geographically. They're understanding kind of visually how weather is impacting them. But they're taking that data in on a point-by-point basis to analyze it against their own data, whether it be asset data or in some cases in retail sales data at particular locations. Once they understand the relationships between weather and their assets, they then systematically put it into action. They communicate that on a regular basis, through dashboards or whatever, to decision makers, to their operational personnel. And then they also use that and sometimes broadcast it out to broader groups of their constituents, to their workers in the field, for example, so that everybody can benefit from the information. And that seems to be, when you take all those things together, that provides a successful outcome for a business that's incorporated weather. Those are the winners out there. So we wanted to help them do that by taking a disparate set of services that we had and pulling them together into a single application suite. So much like the Maximo application suite, the Weather Operations Center starts with data. So all of those weather APIs, everything driving those 50 billion calls on our data center every day are available to our users. It's infused with geospatial analytics. So you can take that data in with other data that's available through geospatial analytics. The tool comes with 6 petabytes of data. To really do some analysis, you could pull your own data into that and understand kind of, how you're impacted and how weather and other things are coming together to help you make a decision. And once you've done that, once you've built that model of understanding, you can promote it into dashboard visualization. So you can track weather and analytics in a single dashboard for each location that you need to monitor, and then alert out to your personnel when thresholds that you're monitoring get exceeded. So you can have a threshold exceedance kick off an alert to a user. So that's the Weather Operations Center kind of in broad form. As I said, the services here, from geospatial to alerts to APIs and visualizations, we're doing several integrations. So we're working with Maximo now on work orders. We're doing some stuff with the IBM Sterling team and with IBM's Digital Twin Exchange. But we've also created a number of, kind of out-of-the-box industry solutions where we've already built kind of an industry-specific package based on a use case for that industry. So for energy and utilities, we have 2. We have our vegetation management add-on, and we also have outage prediction. In aviation, we have an add-on for airport operations. And in agriculture, we have an add-on there that can be used to provide field-specific analytics and data to farmers so they can understand throughout the growing season, how their crops are being impacted. I just wanted to take you through one of those add-ons simply because it's the one most closely tied to Maximo. That's one that we're working on right now, and that's vegetation management. So So as a utility company, you may not realize it, but one of their largest expenditures each year is in tree trimming, especially in certain parts of the country. Because where you have overhead power lines, and I live in northeastern US in the Boston area, and everything here in New England is overhead power lines. So any tree that's overhanging a power line is a potential outage. So they try on a regular basis to trim trees back to reduce that risk. But it's a very expensive prospect to do that. Not just the trimming itself, but inspecting, understanding where they have to cut, cut trees, where they have to go out. So they're looking for ways to improve that. And we've built a tool, vegetation management, that does that through satellite imagery and AI. So we can quickly look at a user's power line maps along with their satellite maps and other data they may have. They may have collected LiDAR data in some areas and other things. We can put that all into the system and score and by line segment which ones have the highest probability for, or require the greatest amount of trimming. So the system automatically does that, presents them with a priority score. And then we're working now with the Maximo team to provide kind of an automated fashion where the user can set, priority scores of concern. So let's say it's, we're scoring P1 through 5, where P1 is the highest priority. Maybe you open a work order automatically anytime you see a P1 or a P2, so that automatically gets driven into the system. Once that work order is created and the user goes out and trims, that feedback goes back into the veg management system, so we know that those trees have been cut. The scores get adjusted on those line segments, so the overall model is updated. So it's a continual feedback loop that we're providing by working with Maximo and integrating that with the work orders. In addition, we're working to just pull in any groups of assets from Maximo, so that you can take those asset types and overlay them, on weather maps, so you can monitor. Say you're tracking assets that are human assets, workers out in the field. You're able to track those and understand their proximity to inclement weather, or we can automatically alert on certain thresholds that you set for assets. So if you have machinery that doesn't operate well in certain temperatures, whether they be really cold temperatures or really hot temperatures, we can alert on not just the exceedance of those temperatures, but the forecasted exceedance. So you can plan for that. So you can know that, hey, there's an alert in effect 2 days from now where the temperatures are going to drop below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. We know that these pumps freeze if that happens. We need to go out there and proactively do something to protect that from happening. So we're building those touch points between the Weather Operations Center and Maximo, so that users can jump to the Weather Operations Center and really dig in if they need to for weather data, or the Weather Operations Center can push information into Maximo to bring it to your attention when you need to focus on it. So that's the work going on right now, and that we're really excited about with the Maximo team. So let me just kind of, pause there with, I've talked a lot about weather. Hopefully you all understand how weather does impact the businesses that you're in. But think about it. Think how weather, when tied to the various assets that you monitor through Maximo, how could better weather information help you? How could historical weather information help you understand kind of the causal relationships between your assets and weather? How could current information help you monitor it in real time to understand what's going on? And how can forecasted weather help you be more proactive? How can you take that knowledge that you've gained and build it into more predictive, modes for your business? So understanding when something could fail, when you could have a problem with something before it does happen, and prepare for that. And that brings me to the end. Hopefully this was informative to you. We're excited to be working with the Maximo team, and hopefully can help you in your future engagements as well. I'll turn it back to you guys.
Thank you, John. Well, we have come to the more interactive portion of our meeting, Q&A. So there have been a few questions that have been asked, and if I could ask everybody to, all of our presenters, to come back online so we can see everybody's
Smiley faces.
Now, we did have a couple of people leave. As I said, Rick had to go attend to some weather issues. Scott Yates had to jump off. He was going to try and get back to answer questions. So if there are any questions, and there were a few with regards to IoT, we can take those and get those to Scott for answering, unless we have somebody who can address those. So let's see. Kim, are you still on?
Yeah, I see we had a few IBM 8 questions.
Yes, there were a plethora of questions from Kim's presentation.
And actually what we can do is we can address those questions and then post them on our website communities as well. One of the things that I do want to mention is if you haven't already joined the LinkedIn community, there is a PacMUG user group community, and we can actually post our answers to those questions on the PacMUG user group community on LinkedIn, as probably in the More community as well. Chris? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's see.
So a few questions. And there's a Maximo 8 questions on costs for existing users when moving to 8. We'll follow up with that.
So, and also if you want to raise your hand, I'll open the mic for you.
That would be good.
And allow you to answer that or ask that question directly.
And thanks, John. That was quite informative on weather solutions out there. I know there's a lot of industries out there that are reliant on weather conditions to, which is key to their operations.
And maybe if Rick had that running at his place, he could have predicted problems.
He may not have been able to stop it, but he might have been like Scott and had a generator all ready to go. So.
Yeah, of those who don't know, I'm running on a generator right now. I'm in Northern California, massive windstorm and snowstorm. It's all good. Living in the country. Okay, another question's coming up.
All right, so anybody want to raise their hand? Come on. We want to hear your voice.
So I've got one here from Steve Platt to Maureen. Do you print your own asset labels? And if so, recommend barcode printer? You might be muted, Maureen.
There we go.
Yes, we do print our own barcode labels. We just changed the brand of barcode label printer that we were using. And if you want, I don't actually know which one they decided on. So if you want me to get back to you about that, I can do that. But yes, we do. We've always printed our own barcode labels. We're actually using a ruggedized label with an RFID chip in it. So it's a little bit
Wow.
different than just a regular barcode. With the hopes of sometime we're actually going to use the RFID piece, right?
Good. Oh, there's Kim for some Maximo questions.
And Kim, you're muted.
I'm back.
There you are.
Did I miss some?
All right. So no, we were just getting going.
Okay.
So one question for you, is there a sandbox environment for the application suite?
No, not yet. Well, for the application suite, I don't think there is. I can find out about that. I'm hoping that we're going to do like we do today, like a demo environment that's out through the support site. But we're a little ways away from being ready for that yet. So I can find out if there's one for 8.2, right? And that would have some of the other components, but it won't have the Maximo EAM included.
Okay. And I guess as a follow-up to that, so with regards to preparing, what upgrade issues do you anticipate that users can prepare for? That's a good question. Pretty broad.
If I got my crystal ball, if I can see. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm guessing that some of it just where the changes are, right? So changes around the integration to use, Kafka instead of RMI, things like that, or where there might be some hiccups. It'll be more around, converting some of those integration points, I guess. I don't think it's going to be around, the data model, like typical things where we would see it, right? Like with reports or customizations or configurations. I think that is all going to be smooth. So that's my crystal ball anyway. I think as we get more people moving, we'll start to try and capture them and understand it a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a differential in cost based on what version you might be upgrading from?
There is an upgrade charge for 8.0. So you have to work with your sales team. There's a lot of value that's provided, and so part of that charge is because of the technology that we're providing with the solution. But if you work through and with your app points, I think that we've seen some success with sellers and converting some of our customers where it's a palatable amount of money, I say.
Mm-hmm. Another one, Kim, for you. Is there anything built into Maximo Mobile that would allow remote management of mobile devices?
Yeah, I saw that one earlier, and I reached out to one of my mobile guys, and they said, are they really asking about MDM type software, and that we would usually point to a third party, like we don't do mobile management, device management ourselves. So
right. Plenty of third parties out there.
That may be around an MDM, third-party MDM, like IBM has one.
Yeah.
Mobile Iron's a pretty popular one, so probably one of those. I'm not advocating anyone in particular.
Yeah, and I guess ours, we don't embed anything like that in our deliverable.
And not on the roadmap to do so either.
No, that was my understanding.
Yeah.
What about the future of BART, Kim?
We'll continue to support BART. There are we need to update it to a later version that's not on Java 8, if I'm getting the numbers right. So that'll be coming. I don't know if it'll be in this initial release of the application suite with Manage, but one soon after, because we're kind of on a clock to do it. But BART is, for the foreseeable future, the reporting engine.
So no new training involved.
Right. Yeah, that would be another one back to the upgrade question, right? That reports, if there was a change in the reporting engine where there might be some, I don't know about it. It would just be where some effort might be needed, but not in this case.
So there was another question that Maureen had was wondering about reporting or dashboarding tools that people may need to know to handle user-defined needs.
No, I'm not. It's something about like technology that we've embedded for our dashboards. I think those are all things we've developed. There's no other dashboarding tools that I'm aware of that we've used that I could point you to. Suppose I could follow up. Maybe I don't know as much. Perhaps, you know, is there something on the monitor side? I feel like that was all native capabilities that we built, though, but I can confirm that.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised. Any other questions out there from the audience?
So there was a question about the presentations, whether they were going to be available, where they're going to be available. So I guess, Scott, if you want to go over that.
Yeah, so the presentations will be available on the IBM PacMUG community website, the ZPro Solutions website, events page, EDI's website, as well as the More community. So we'll try to have those posted in the next couple of days.
And I guess for those of you who have not registered on the PacMUG site, please do so. Mm-hmm. And you will get access to all of this wonderful information.
Yes, you will. All right, you want to wrap her up, Michael?
Sure. So we're now at
give some folks a little bit more time back in their day.
Yeah, give you a little under half an hour. So a minute. Oh, just a comment.
Yeah, I can.
So again, thank you everyone for participating, either as a panelist or as a participant. We had a little over 100 people in attendance today, so I think that's a good start. Mm-hmm. And as we look at growing this community, again, it's designed to provide some interaction between Maximo users all up and down the Pacific coast. So really the value of this group is sharing of information, and that's kind of what we're all about. And thank you again to our sponsors, EDI ZPro Solutions, Projitech, and Quarry and Associates for supporting this group. We do have a kind of a steering committee that is comprised of both vendors as well as end users, and if you're interested in participating at that level, please get a hold of us, and we would love to get your input as to how to make this better. Maureen Holland is part of that group as it is right now, so I'm sure she can attest to the value that she gets from being able to help guide and steer this committee. Mm-hmm. So as far as the future events for PacMUG, I will hand that over to you, Scott.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. So if you would like to schedule a follow-up conversation around any of the featured presentations or spotlights today, please send us a note. And as mentioned earlier, you can access the recorded webinars on the various sites that we'd mentioned. One of the things that we're going to be working on is our spring event. We already have some good topics to discuss. We're in the planning stages. If you would be interested in being involved with our spring meeting, please send me a note or Michael, and we can chat about that as well. Again, our LinkedIn PacMUG site, please join that, and that's how probably our main avenue of staying engaged with updates and upcoming meetings and being able to register for events. The spring meeting will be hosted by ZPro Solutions in conjunction with EDI. And again, I'd like to thank EDI for hosting this particular webinar session. We always learn a lot through these difficult times with webinars, but we're all getting better, and there's more and more tools coming out there which help to enhance our experience with webinars. So hopefully we'll get back to some live events. And again, with the live events, we'll have our sponsors. We'll be able to provide breakfast, lunch, and social hours provided by our sponsors. I know we all miss that, right? We are a tight-knit community, and we like to have a good time, and we like to actually shake hands with folks and bump knuckles or whatever we're going to be doing going forward. So
elbows, bumping
elbows, knuckles, yeah, whatever's appropriate. So anyway, again, thanks again to our presenters and sponsors out there again, and you guys, stay safe, and we'll see you in the springtime.
Thank you all.
Thanks for attending, y'all.